Horror is a genre built upon making you feel afraid for your own life, even in the comfort of a cinema or your own home. Thanks to this, it's rare to see any characters survive. Plenty of horror movie victims have fallen throughout the years, so much so fans have gotten used to the tropes of the genre. You can usually identify someone destined for death right away based on their actions, casting, writing, or general personality. There are also times when a character suffers an attack that makes them seem like an instant goner. However, there are some figures who manage to make it through their movie despite all of your best judgment. Some of these folk have already been covered in a previous video, so be sure to check that video out, but plentiful others have unexpectedly stood up to the trials and tribulations of the genre and made it out alive. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with 10 more unexpected horror movie survivors. Number 10. Tallahassee in Zombieland. Surviving any horror is a miracle, but you've really got luck on your side if you manage to make it out of a zombie movie. On top of that, imagine taking the dead mentor trope into a place where death walks the streets. Boy, you'd better start writing a will because it doesn't look good. That's what many expected for Zombieland's Tallahassee, but it's hard to keep a good cowboy down. This character, played by the legendary Woody Harrelson, is the mentor to Jesse Eisenberg's Columbus in a world ravaged by the undead. He's badass, cool, and amusing, but his position as the mentor of the group makes you doubt he'll make it out alive. The character seemed destined for a heroic sacrifice akin to Obi-Wan or Gandalf. The movie's climax starts to pay this off as Tallahassee distracts a massive horde of zombies by leading them away from our other protagonists. He then locks himself in a booth with only 2 pistols and sets himself up for an epic final hurrah. But this never comes, as Tallahassee genuinely kills all the monsters with his limited weaponry. It came as a big surprise that Harrelson's character made it through Zombieland and Zombieland Double Tap, which shows you never really know what's going to happen in a zombie flick. Number 9. Jake in Jaws the Revenge. Terrible sequels are a rite of passage for horror franchises, and the Jaws series goes right in for the kill with them. The worst of the bunch has to be the so bad it's good Jaws the Revenge, which comes with some shocking, if illogical, surprises. This character's survival is certainly one of them. Jake is the best friend of Michael, one of the leading characters, and the son of Martin and Ellen Brody, and thus you instantly assume Jake will be a tasty snack for the villainous shark. The best friend figure in a movie with a killer monster? Yeah, good luck, Jake. To make this even worse, he came as close to death as one can get. During the film, Jake fell directly into the jaws of the killer shark and was dragged away as his blood drenched the waters. It was easy to assume Jake was done, kaput, dead. But after the shark was taken care of, Jake miraculously showed up in the middle of the sea, having sustained non-life-threatening injuries. What? The film's original cut acknowledged the unlikeliness of this, as Jake initially died in the attack, but the revised ending retconned this and chose to have him survive instead, because being taken into the mouth of a killer shark is hardly a death sentence, apparently. Number 8. James Foster in Infinity Pool. Death fake-outs are an essential part of the movie industry, and this film is in many ways entirely based on that concept. James Foster, played by Alexander Skarsgård, goes through some major trauma in Infinity Pool, and the fact that he makes it out alive is something nobody could have predicted. The film takes place in a fictional country named Litolka. It follows a couple on vacation to the oppressive location who soon learn about a bizarre legal procedure after committing manslaughter in a hit and run. The country allows people to pay a hefty fee that creates a double to incur the death penalty in their place. James, who is forced to witness his clone die, soon spirals into chaos as he befriends a group of rich tourists who use their wealth to exploit the system for their own hedonistic desires. The movie is full of fake-out moments that make you think you're witnessing a character's death only to realize it was one of the doubles. This already makes you convinced James is destined for death, but it gets even worse after you discover that the group is also torturing him for their own amusement. Ultimately, it seems like James is doomed, as these folk can kill him with no consequences. But they don't, and he ends the film as a hollow yet living shell of himself. Number 7. Amber Sweet in Repo the Genetic Opera. Wait, so you've got Paris Hilton in your movie filled to the brim with gory as hell violence and a boatload of murder, and you don't kill her off? That's like being offered trail mix and picking the raisins. The criminally underrated Repo the Genetic Opera is a bizarre yet thrilling horror experience that combines bloody mayhem with toe-tapping songs. However, one of the biggest shocks is that the filmmakers had the chance to kill off the infamous Paris Hilton and didn't take it. Hilton appears in the movie as the spoiled daughter of the powerful and rich witch antagonist, a role she's undoubtedly accustomed to. She ultimately does a great job in the film, but the viewers expecting her to bite the bullet House of Wax style were let down in the end. The film even teases some destruction for Amber as her face literally falls off during a gruesome singing performance. Yet not only is she still alive by the film's climax, she has inherited her father's company and is set to become the most influential person in the world. Who could have seen that coming? Number 6. He in Antichrist. Willem Dafoe has been through a lot on screen, but if you've seen Lars von Trier's Antichrist, you know it can always get worse. His character experiences plenty of pain in this one, and the whole movie seems set up to Dafoe's he 6 feet under. But as you can tell from the nature of this list, he defies the odds and makes it out alive. The movie follows a nameless husband and wife whose child fell out of a window while they were having sex. This guilt leads the wife, She, into a depressed spiral which the husband attempts to get her out of by taking She to a cabin in the woods. Yeah, because that always ends well. As the film unfolds, so does her sanity as she grows increasingly erratic, psychotic and violent. It's easy to assume Dafoe will eventually become a victim of this, as all stories in this vein tend to end with the husband dying. But despite all the horrendous torture he suffers and the already stacked odds against him, he manages to survive the film after eventually breaking free and strangling his wife. Number 5. Derek in Bad Taste. When a director inserts themselves into their gloriously violent film, you can usually expect them to die. Quentin Tarantino blowing himself up in Django Unchained is a great example, and fans of the early work of Peter Jackson might have expected the same fate for Derek. But it wasn't meant to be. Jackson appeared as Derek in his first ever feature-length film, Bad Taste. The movie is a gross and over-the-top splatter flick that depicts an alien invasion in a small New Zealand town. Derek is incredibly meek and awkward in his introduction, but he's completely changed after a scrap with an alien causes him to fall off a cliff and crack his skull open. This accident forces Derek's brain to start dripping out of a hole in his head, which he fixes by wearing a hat. The fall itself already should have done him in, but the character goes wild from there on out, losing his sanity and becoming a blood-crazed alien-hunting psycho. The combination of the director playing the character, his initially pathetic presentation, and the horrible injuries he sustains should have kept Derek down for the count. Yet, while he was completely insane by the end, he was still breathing. Number 4. Wallace in Tusk. Wallace is a character who, in many respects, would have been better off had he not survived this movie. Still, he surprised everyone by making it through to the end of Tusk, and that is not the happy ending it should be. For the uninitiated, Tusk is a bizarre-as-hell Kevin Smith movie that follows an arrogant podcast host who is held captive by a madman and slowly turned into a walrus. Yep, really. It's a grotesque body horror that sees a character go through unimaginable torment, and it's easy to predict his death towards the end, despite it never coming. Wallace concludes the film having been entirely converted into the tusked beast, living as a miserable animal who has seemingly lost all of his humanity. Most viewers would assume he'd be mercy-killed to spare him from this fate worse than death. However, that's not what happens, as Wallace is sent to a wildlife sanctuary where he lives as a walrus. This awful fate is one of the worst in horror, and Wallace could have easily avoided it had he died instead. Despite death being the most predictable outcome, it never happens. Number 3. Julia in Watcher. Many of the entries on this list are focused on characters who sustained awful injuries and pulled through, but Julia takes the cake in that regard, as she should have never made it out of what happened to her and her throat. Watcher is a simple yet effective horror that terrifies you with stranger danger and the feeling of helplessness that comes from being stalked. Julia is an unfortunate victim of this, as she is haunted by a mysterious figure who watches her every move. The voyeurism eventually becomes violent in the climax, which sees Julia receive a knife slash to the side of her neck. The viewer then watches as she painfully crawls away before eventually slowing down and seemingly bleeding out, all while her murderer watches. Now, it's easy to assume a character is 100% done after this, as that's what movies and life has always taught people. But Julia is a trooper who somehow clings to life after getting her throat slashed. She even musters the ability to stand up and shoot the killer, implying she had faked her demise after crawling away to lure him into a false sense of security. You go, girl! Number 2. Chris Washington in Get Out. Watching the struggle of Chris trying to survive in Get Out is the kind of thing the phrase edge of your seat was built for. This whole movie is a masterclass in tension and suspense, and there are very few moments where it seems like the hero will make it out. This is especially true in the climax, as every viewer thought the film would go in a different direction. That climax sees Chris escaping from the house of his tormentors, having just discovered his girlfriend was recruiting black men for a terrifying reason. He manages to fight her off and does some damage to her, but just as he's getting away, a cop car pulls up and she tries to paint Chris as the attacker. Naturally, everyone watching got a lump in their throat, as everyone up to date on American politics knew where this was going. Chris was about to die to illustrate a tragic yet important point. However, the movie got to have its cake and eat it too, by making you feel that way before relieving your anxiety as Chris's friend exited the car and saved him. Jordan Peele, the writer and director, revealed that the original ending would have seen Chris arrested. Thankfully, this brighter conclusion made the final cut instead. Number 1. Dwight Dewey Riley in Scream. The Scream franchise has a whole evidence locker full of iconic characters, including Sidney Prescott, Ghostface, Randy Meeks, Gale Weathers, and of course, Dewey Riley. Lovable and bumbling cop Dewey is a delightful veteran of Woodsboro, but you'd be lying if you thought he was going to survive the first movie. Dewey was presented as the perfect cannon fodder for the murderous Ghostface in Scream. He was kind, goofy, and somewhat cowardly, despite having a brave heart in the end. This made him feel like a guaranteed slasher flick victim, as seeing a likeable character get unfairly killed or sacrificing themselves for the greater good is common in the genre. Hell, Scream even worked hard to make you think this would happen after Riley was stabbed in the back by Ghostface. Yet, as Dewey proves, a good knife to the back isn't always the end. Not only does he survive this attempt, but he makes it through the whole movie and most of its sequels. Just because you're light comic relief doesn't mean you're destined for the chopping block, it seems. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then make sure you check out the original video first in case that character's on there, but if not, let us know in the comments down below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.